Hello everybody. I am going to explain to you for this lecture about analogies, images and transformation. This is going to cover the chapter or part of the syllabus which is talking about semiotics. We're going to begin with logical analogies. Logical analogies is a comparison from point to point, apple to apple. And it has to make sense. For example, this picture, I happen to choose the picture of the World Trade Center on fire. And this ad sort of compares terrorism-related deaths to tobacco-related deaths. Well, tobacco-related deaths is like 30 million, and terrorism-related deaths is 11,000. So interesting, isn't it? What about this? A group of seals sunbathing on the beach can be compared to a group of people sunbathing on the beach too. So if you go to a beach that's full of people sunbathing, it kind of reminds me of the group of seals. Now, synesthetic analogies. Now this is more interpretive. When you see or hear, or you sort of trigger off the senses, so you sort of interpret it based on your senses. Now, this is an illustration of sound waves interpreted by a computer, and this is an interpretation of sound or music by an artist. Now, he would have listened to something quite nice or quite intriguing, and he decided to paint a whole picture in related to what he was listening to. Another one that's quite abstract, you can tell which is the beats, and you have the foreground music and you got the background music. It must have been quite a graceful song. What about this? Affective analogies. Now, affective analogies is about emotional resemblance. You see a picture and you're affected by it emotionally. Now, this picture of this beautiful model, you're affected by it. You think she's beautiful. It's true, isn't it? You feel that it's beautiful. You don't have to figure that out, because the beauty is quite captivating. Now, if you move on to the next slide, there you go, a beautiful flower. A beautiful flower can be compared to a beautiful model. Yeah? Or you usually compare a beautiful model to a beautiful flower. Boyfriends do that to their girlfriends all the time. Or girls do that to the boys all the time. Depends. What about this? Now, affective analogies is strongly related to empathic projection, in which you project yourself as something else. For example, if you look at a picture of an eagle flying up high in the sky like this, you would be asking this question, wow, what would it feel like if I was that bird? Paradoxical analogies is two very distinct areas or opposites but coming together. For example, living dead. It's almost like the word itself is like a pun, the living dead. So you put living and the dead together, you have the living dead. And sometimes the living dead is a sort of a metaphor. We'll get into that soon. The machine society. People walking the exact same steps everywhere they go. And they're not happy. Everything is grey. So you got, the machine society. So riddles and puns also are, in a way, a form of analogy. And for example, this picture, a light bulb, combine a light bulb with a bottle of beer, you call it light beer. And got milk, this woman said, I'm giving you my milk, or she's pouring milk in a glass, strategically placed at a strategic location. Another pun. So these are all visual puns which many times you see in ads You see in shows, even in press ads, they say a lot of things. A drowning car. You can create your own puns, by looking at certain things. You can be inspired by what you see and what you experience. Oh my gosh, how time flies. There you go, a flying clock. Our base is under attack. Wow. Our base is under attack. Look at the language being used. Look at the terminologies being used. Assault with a deadly weapon. Interesting. Make up your mind. Use makeup to make up your brain. So that visual is, in the literal sense, illustrating the pun itself. Metaphor. Now, metaphors are very powerful. You create metaphors to make statements like this. You can't directly show what it is. Excuse me. You can't exactly show a man doing this, but you can show a spider, a tarantula, depicting its danger, depicting the deadly element of AIDS. So this is a very effective metaphor for anti-AIDS campaign. Dunkin' Donuts, they're rebuilding, modifying their stores or adding more stores, and putting such an ad is a very good information element for everybody to understand that. Even political ads have very strong metaphors. As you can see here, a noose with the gas, the oil pump. And you have the hourglass that's depicting life's fragility. A city at the brink of extinction even has pictures of trees cut down. So there you go. Or nature in the brink of extinction too. And you have strong metaphors in movies and storytelling that depicts a strong philosophical understanding or religious understanding or some form of moral code. A classic battle between good and evil, which can be depicted in a more fantastical way. You have each characters, for example, in Lord of the Rings, that represent the different levels of understanding, different variety of intellect that interprets evil and good for a similar cause. And you also have something that's quite ambiguous, ads and posters that have metaphors that directly relates to peace and war, or what is dark and what is light. As you can see, it doesn't necessarily always have to be clear. Graphic representations, on the other hand, is a form of abstraction. That's what you are in the business of doing. Now, abstractions of the real world. We start off with projections. Projections is point-to-point. Representation means realistic drawings or realistic illustrations. Realistic, everything that's realistic, including photography. A realistic drawing like this and you see photography. A well-composed photograph looks almost like a painting, but it's not a painting. And you see portrait of a lion, and even a nice painting of a couple in the woods. Now these are all realistic, there's nothing exaggerated. These are point-to-point projections. But you have projections that look that sort of has likenesses. As we go on. Now likenesses, these projections are stylized. So these projections are rather stylized and they depend on what is recognizable. For example, this flower is kind of recognizable as a flower. My gosh, it is a flower. But then if you stylize it and you put it in a more graphic form, you turn it into a cartoon or a two-dimensional drawing, you still could recognize the fact that it's a flower, or it could be the same flower. But how do you know? Because it has petals. Okay, all flowers has some form of petal. There's a stem, it has the stigma, and etc. And then you have the hyena, the spotted hyena. It's a cartoon version of a hyena, but how do you know it's a hyena? You notice the part of the hyena which is recognizable. Notice the body, the shape, the curves, the eyes. Looks humorous, but you know it's a spotted hyena. So these are a graphic representation of a hyena. And how do you know that's an elephant on the top? So that elephant, you see that the head, the trunk, the legs, recognizable. Some elements here are truly recognizable, so you know it's an elephant. The baboon. Of course, you see humans. Now, this is a most taken for granted representations or graphic representations of human. You see that in sports, in Olympics. You see that everywhere. You see it in the streets, signages, even the toilet. And if you go way back, you notice the graphic representations of humans have always been done by the early civilization. As you can see, case in point, some of these slides shows that. And some of these early representations have been adapted in modern day coins. As you can see, this is one example. If you go really way back, cavemen have already been starting to use graphic symbols in the cave walls. Surrogate images. Surrogate images are symbolic representations. Now you notice this lady who became a robot, became the tool of the fascist government, became the tool of the machine society. So this person, the surrogate image, represents an issue, a statement. This man, Albrecht Dürer's etching about this angelic person playing the lute. The wingman playing the lute could represent romance, could represent some element in religion, etc. Now these two things, this surrogate image represents tragedy and joy, and laughter represent drama.
It's 11 o'clock.
The phallic symbol. Now this phallic symbol is thousands of years old. It represents a symbol of power and fertility. Another graphic representation when during that time the civilization wants to add more population. So there you go. The peace symbol. And you see lots of surrogate images in ads and how they play around with photography. And you see surrogate images in signages, corporate identity, brands, even product ads. And of course, surrogate images and metaphors get involved. Some of the things that creates surrogate images are some sense of transformation on the image itself. For example, if you magnify an element in a scene, for example, in Lemuel Gulliver's Travels, you see this large, huge, gigantic Lemuel Gulliver with the small people of Lilliput. What does that say? It does actually say something. There are various interpretations of this. Gulliver has a big ego, or it could be that the people of Lilliput have narrow-minded people, so they're puny. They can't think as big as Gulliver. So these are important issues. Minification. We as humans, we like to miniaturize things, like to see things small. We like to look at things from a very big perspective. We like to be in control of things. Funny, isn't it? Multiplication. We like to make copies of things. We like to duplicate things. We like to see and duplicate that and modify it. There's always the element of multiplication in art and design. And then you have modification, which is actually substitution. You substitute and modify an element to enhance its storyline, to enhance the product. Some form of innovation appears here. And then you move on to myths and archetypes. Now in myths and archetypes, you have mythicization and demythization. You can demythicize something. That means you look at myth, you create the element of myth to say something, and then you demythicize an existing myth to try to understand why the myth was created in the first place. Something like legends. The Lord of the Rings is a mythology written by J.R.R. Tolkien, but it is based on his experiences in World War I as a soldier, as an officer. Hansel and Gretel is based on didn't expect that dog to bark actually. Anyway, it's based on a couple of abused kids, and their evil stepmother is actually represented by a witch. The Watchman represents the necessary evil. Excuse me. Represents a necessary evil. It does build on everybody's character and their experiences and the baggage they carry. But they all want to do good, but in the darker way. So myths are actually representing storytelling. They represent something that's quite speculative to validate, an existing element, a civilization. And it does tell, to some extent, some story about its origins of a culture, origins of a particular situation, the function of a particular situation. Now, classical myths are etiological in form. Myths have the power to shape minds and thoughts. So you notice there's a lot of heroes, anti-heroes, born loser elements, and they function as eccentric imagery, self-discovery, religious confession, spiritual experience. You can create an entire mythology to prove your experience religiously or spiritually, or something that you discovered yourself, a point, a story that you wrote, a statement that you wrote, a design solution. So there you go. So science fiction and fantasy plays that role. And you see in history, H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, they came up with lots of science fiction imagery. For example, Jules Verne's From the Earth to the Moon talks about how they shoot a projectile from a humongous cannon into the moon. Funny enough, in 1969, we actually gone to the moon using almost the same principle. And this is a picture of a world, a futuristic world. So such worlds can be actually created by us. You can actually create your own world. And Stargate is one of a very famous science fiction series that talk about exploration to different galaxies through gates. And these gates could very well represent your mind, a medium like books. The War of the Worlds represents clash of two cultures, civilization, and what is foreign, the fear of what is foreign, the fear of what is strange. So there's always this conflict with things which is unknown. We always fear the unknown, and we try to take measures into our own hands, but little do we realize that we ourselves have the ability to stand up to any threat. And this from science fiction to science fact. And you can see Asimo. This is Asimo, the Honda's robot, the only humanoid robot currently which can walk, dance, play games, run. And you see superheroes. Superheroes represent the society's yearning and need for answers, solutions. And the various different types of superheroes represent different areas of need. And you have real life superheroes. And these real life superheroes, they sort of take it literally. They use a symbol to actually fight crime. And real life superheroes represent this group of people's initiative, their desire and determination to do what's right, and that by itself is quite interesting, and shows that people want to, don't want to be conformed to just regulations, but they want to live the regulation. They want to be the ones to enforce it in a more special way. So that's about it. This is the end of the slide. Thank you for listening, and I'm sorry for any background sound effects. So hope you can download this lecture, and if you have any questions, please ask me, shoot me an email, or check the blog and leave a comment. Thank you very much.